Okay, today we got this Zastava M76 rifle again. We posted a video. We fitted the bolt to the bullet guide, and we took it to the range, and we had 4 magazines loaded up with 10 rounds each of the 8mm Mauser. And what happened was most of the magazines went off for the first 5 rounds okay, but the second 5 rounds that were in the magazine would not feed properly. So that was with all the magazines. We noticed that it was either the first 5 or 6 rounds would feed, and then the rest just wouldn't feed. It would the bullet, when the bolt was trying to close on the and push the new bullet into the chamber, or the new round into the chamber, it would the round would get jammed between the chamber and the magazine lips. It was still engaged in the magazine lips. It was trying to get into the chamber, and the bolt pushing the back end of it would just stop. So after we did that through 4 different magazines, and we even tried changing the gas setting, we upped it by 1 on that last magazine. There was no difference. So we brought it back home, and we went back to our AKFILES, which is a good source for information on these, and we had conversations with AK Blue and Robert Forbes. Mr. Forbes, they both came to the consensus that this was a magazine issue, or the way the magazine was setting in the rifle, and they provided some dimensions for me to measure. And one of the dimensions is this, the dimension from, there's a spacer plate that's underneath the trigger guard, and that spacer plate has a small relief cut in it, and the dimension from the top of the receiver to the relief on the spacer plate on a known good rifle was 39.6 millimeters. We got that information from Robert Forbes on the AK files. It's on the form. And so he said, basically measure what you got on yours and see what the difference is. Well, here we are. We've got a piece of 1/4-inch key stock. It's nominal key stock, but it's a brand new piece. It's a straight piece of steel, and it's, cold roll. What we did is we've got a stick here placed in the magazine latch to hold it fully open, so we've got clearance to get our micrometer in. We've got a 2-inch micrometer, and the 2-inch mic is setting on the relief area of that spacer plate. That's where the rear of the magazine, rear lug, seats up against the receiver. So we got it on that, and then we're across the top of the receiver here, so we're able to get a dimension with a 2-inch mic at, let me grab my piece of paper here. Alright, so what we're measuring here is from the top of the receiver with our key stock in here, and then down to the spot where the magazine seats, the rear lug for the magazine seats. And when we pull this all apart and take a look at the number, it's, you gotta slowly fit this in and slowly crank down till you get all the wobble out of it, and you got this thing so it fits very, slips real nice like a feeler gauge. And in this case we've got 1-inch 852 thousandths. That's the measurement we've got between the top of the key stock and the relief area on that spacer plate. Now the key stock is .249. It's just under a 1/4 inch. It's 1/1000 under a 1/4 inch. So if you subtract the key stock from our dimension 1.852, we end up with, from the top of the receiver to the relief area, at 1 inch 603 thousandths. And you just measure that by, you know, you got to get a good flat piece of steel, put it across the top of the receiver, and then you're going down to that relief area, and then you get your micrometer in here, and you slowly crank down on this baby. It's not a C-clamp, so don't use it like a C-clamp, but you got to kind of get it so that you got all the side-to-side movement out of it, and then get a real nice slip fit on it. And when you're there, you know, that's going to be your measurement. Again, you don't want to have any, you know, cock in it. You just want to have a nice slip fit on it. And when you get down there, and here we are at 52. So that's how you get that dimension. Now, when we got that, the other thing our Forbes provided us was a known good rifle dimension at 39.6 millimeters. Well, when we take 39.6 millimeters and convert that to thousandths of an inch, it comes out to 1.559. So if we take our dimension on this rifle at 1.603 and subtract the 1.559, we end up with 44 thousandths. So on this rifle, the rear of the magazine, because of this spacer plate or because of the way this receiver is made, sets low by 44 thousandths. So what they also talked about on AKFILES forum is this is a Century build, and when Century made these, I think the discussion was that there might have been 3 different types of receivers that were used, all manufactured by I believe ORF. I'm not 100% what ORF is. I know it's the company that was just before Assault Weapons of Ohio, AWO, and ORF, I believe, was Ohio Rifle something. So when they made these, I guess they went through a couple of variations on the receiver, and this is one of the variations, or so I'm led to believe. And that's what Century was using on their builds, and this is a Century build. So I'm going to get this thing flipped over. We might, maybe what we'll do is we'll take the hammer out next. Before we were worried about taking out the hammer, I wanted to show you what we were looking at here. And the area that we were measuring to is this little, I don't know if it's going to show up here, but there's a relief area, and that's underneath the magazine latch. Now I've got the magazine latch held open with a stick so that I can get the micrometer in on this area, because if I take that stick out, the latch moves forward and I can't get the micrometer in here. So by placing this in here, it allows me to from the top, to slide that micrometer into this area. This spacer plate, you've got the trigger guard here, and then between the receiver and the trigger guard, which part of the trigger guard is the latch, is a spacer plate. On the spacer plate also is the stop for the safety. So the thought here is that if we take the spacer plate out, the magazine will now set against the receiver, and it will be moved up by 44 thousandths. I'm sorry, it'll be moved up by 42 thousandths, which will be much closer to the 44 thousandths that I need, and I'll only be 2 thousandths out. So the project here is to go ahead and drill these 4 rivets out that hold the front of the trigger guard on, and remove the spacer plate. And what we were then going to do is install some screws and nuts, and then put some magazines in this thing with dummy rounds and see if she hand cycles. If she does, the next part of the test would be, with the screws and nuts left in, take it to the range and see if she, feeds in live fire. And if she does that, then go ahead and take the screws and nuts out and put rivets back in. So that's kind of what the plan is here. It's a trial and error, and see if this is going to work with by hand feeding. But the next part of the project is I'll have to make also, once the spacer plate is removed, I will need to make a magazine, or I'm sorry, a safety stop that, instead of setting between the trigger guard and the receiver, it'll set right on top here. It'll have 2 holes drilled in it, and it'll curl around and stop the safety from, coming down any farther. It'll just, act as a stop. So I'll just take a piece of metal and bend it around, basically with the same configuration, only it'll set on top here, and then the 2 rivets will hold it in place. So that's the whole project here, what we're going to attempt to try here. Let me flip it over, and we'll get the trigger out of the trigger and the hammer out of it, and we'll go from there. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to attempt to take the hammer and trigger out of this thing. So what we did is, here's the hammer, and basically all we did is these 2 springs are locked down over the trigger area, and we just brought them up and clicked them over the top of the hammer itself. I think the next part is you take the safety out. I think the safety comes up like this, and out she comes. There's the safety. Then they call this the paper clip, I believe. It locks both the hammer pin and the trigger pin in. So there's the paper clip. Now it looks like there's a pin for the trigger. Comes right out. Once that safety clip is out, it probably leaves. Now they say you got to be very careful with this, because there's a tendency for these springs to come in to bite you. So we'll just kind of set that off. Maybe we'll undo the springs. If I got something here to capture the springs, yeah, that'll capture them. Alright, so that's it. Everything's been removed. You can see, or maybe you can't see, but inside the receiver here, you can see the 4 rivet bucktails are inside here. If I can get this position where maybe you can see them. Maybe I can't. If we can zoom. Yeah, you can see 2 of them right there. So here are 2 bucktails on the opposite side. Here are 2 bucktails that are part of that trigger guard. Let me see if I can get this flipped over. And there they are. So this. Okay, so to remove these rivets, what I've done in the past, not on these exact rivets, but on rivets in general, is you drill the rivet out, and the way it's done is, this is according to one of the drawings I have for AKs, they use a 4mm rivet. So what you want to do is you want to take something, you want to first center punch it, so you find the exact center of what you believe the rivet to be, and center punch it, and that's not on center, so you keep trying until you get it right. Maybe I should have done this off camera. Anyhow, you center punch it, and then you go in with a drill and drill just under the 4mm. And then what I've done is I've taken a punch that fits the hole pretty well and just kind of work it around, because you've got such a thin wall at that point left on the rivet material. Work it around till the head breaks off, and once the head breaks off, then you can just punch the bucktail out. So that's what we're going to try here. So let me get all set up and get a drill here, and we'll try and drill this out. Alright, we're here, we're set up to try and drill this out. Maybe I could slide a box in here, try and catch some of the chips that are going to happen here. What we have is we have a drill. It's got a number 40 drill bit in it. We center punch this this rivet, and we're going to take that number 40 drill. Actually, we center punch both on this side. We're going to take the number 40 drill and see if we can get down into the rivet. So let's see what happens here. I might get something better to catch the chips. Hold on for 1 second. Okay, we got a small box placed in here, hopefully to catch some of these chips. What we're trying to do here is just drill through the head of the rivet and just down into the shank where it passes through the receiver. You can go all the way through to it, you know. If you go all the way through, definitely the rivet's going to be weakened. Okay, we just put a piece of cardboard in here so that when this does break through, if I should hit down hard, it will help protect the trigger guard. Alright, we went all the way through. Looks like it's centered pretty well. We're going to flip it over and take a look at the other side. Okay, on that first one we went all the way through, and we're still in the bucktail, but we drifted off towards the center of the rifle, so we're going to try and do better on this one. This paste is a lubricant. Again, we drifted a little bit on that one. Let's see if the heads will break off of these things. Oh, too bad. I think we need to open them up. So what we'll do is we'll go from the, this is a number 40. We're going to take it the next size up to a number 36. We're not going to go all the way through. We're just going to try and work the head area so we can weaken the head and hopefully break the head off. Now, I think we need to go bigger yet. So from the 36, we're going to jump to a number 31. Yeah, so what I can see right now is as I'm working this punch around, I could see the head is kind of rocking and rolling. So the head is getting weak. And there it is, the head is off. Now what should happen is I should be able to take the punch, hopefully. Actually, I might need a slightly larger punch. Okay, I think I got a larger punch here. See if we can drive this bucktail out of this thing. Okay, the bucktail is out. Okay, there might be just a small remnant of the wall left, but I'm not sure. Okay, so basically you got the idea. We got 2 more to do. We'll get those done and we'll slip this plate out. Alright, we're drilling the back side. We're starting again with a number 40 drill bit. I think we're going to jump right from the number 40 to the number 31. When you drill these out, you don't need a lot of speed on the drill, RPM wise. This is a in the number 1 position, so it's 0 to 400. I'm probably right around the 400. You know, 600 would be plenty good too. Alright, this is the number 31. And now the punch. Again, it's just rocking it around and you can see the head start to deflect. Okay, we got the whole thing out that time. There's the head. There's the bucktail. There's the spacer plate. This is the recessed area on the spacer plate, and you can see where the magazine was setting. That's the seat area of the magazine. By taking this out, alright, so we figured this was I think 42 thousandths. Let's see what it actually measures here. Alright, so we're actually measuring right here on it at this point in time 37 thousandths. So by taking this out, the magazine will move up 37 thousandths. Alright, let me get this cleaned up, get all of this chips off of this, and maybe we'll put some bolts in it and see how she feeds. Okay, what we got here is we removed the rivets that were holding the trigger guard and the magazine catch on the rifle. Also, this is the old, if I can bring this up, if this will focus in here. This is the old spacer plate, and also on the side you can see that it has a it's a stop for the safety. So the safety would, you know, could I guess come down past the bottom of the receiver, so they've got this stop on here. So I'm gonna have to make a new one of these. It's basically gonna look just like this, 2 holes, and it's gonna ride up against the side of the magazine latch trigger guard and be on the outside instead of between the receiver and the trigger guard. So that's got to be addressed, but first I want to see if this is going to even work. So like I say, we've got 4 screws in here. These screws were there's 632 screws, and then we've got some nuts that are on the inside that are pretty much designed for tight spots on aircraft. You can pretty much get them at any surplus. What I'll do is I'll try, I don't know if you can actually see them right here. What I'll try and do is maybe I don't know if this will zoom in on that. Maybe you can pick them up a little bit there. I'll try and do some a still shot maybe. That'll show these nuts. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. But right there you can see 2 of them, and then the other 2 are on the other side. It's a tight spot in there. So these are, like I say, they're made for aircraft, and you can probably get them at any aircraft surplus. So the other thing that I want to show you, let me back this thing off, is that I've got 7 magazines total for this rifle. Of the 7 I've got, now with this everything screwed up tight and the no spacer, well, you can hear that second click. That's the magazine latch. So everything is much snugger than what it was. It'll come out You gotta get it in, and there's the click. You almost gotta kind of wiggle it to get the magazine catch to do the final lock. Each magazine appears to be a little bit different, but the magazine is much more secure than what it used to be. And before, there was you could actually spot a gap. You could see that the magazine was pointed upwards, and that there was a reasonable gap right here on the rear portion of the magazine, which now that's all looks straight and looks much snugger. So that is an improvement. 4 of the magazines fit. You can, that's the same thing at the up, you got to wiggle a little bit and then she locks in. 3 of the magazines I have do not fit at all. I'm not sure what that one just, this is like a perfect mag right here. It's got a question mark on it, so. But it just goes in there and locks in every time. It's relatively snug. The real test is going to be, I'm going to put some dummy rounds in these things. Again, you got to wiggle it around and she locks in. Now the ones that I have that, and all of them come right out. The ones that I have that do not lock, no matter how I wiggle it, that latch just does not come in. And I'm not sure I know what the interference point, if the interference is the lips on the magazine or the catch itself, the distance between here and then the back side of the latch is trying to latch in here. So I don't know if this is too thick or the fact that I'm hitting here first. If it's these, perhaps they could be brought in a little bit. That I got to look at. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 4 magazines that do fit, put some dummy rounds in them, and get the bushel basket out. I got to get this thing back together. Put the trigger back in it and the hammer back in it. Ensure that these nuts don't interfere with anything there. But then get the bushel basket out and dry cycle some dummy rounds through this thing. Okay, I think I got most of the stuff out here. So here's the hammer. Take the hammer out, turn it around. There you go. Now the hammer's in. Bring the trigger on down. Trigger's in. Now the paper clip. And then the safety. So that's how to install the trigger and the hammer. Slide the bolt all the way forward. There's a return spring. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get some dummy rounds in this thing, get the bushel basket out, and do some dry cycling and see what happens. There's a possibility that I might have to, because of the tightness of 4 of the magazines, I might have to, instead of having the spacer plate that was in there, maybe make a spacer plate out of some 5000 shim stock that'll go in here and lower the latch a bit, or depending upon what I find, if the 4 magazines work perfectly, see what it is with the other magazines that are causing the interference and make an adjustment that way. Okay, what we did is we did the cycling with the dummy rounds in. We had some, I believe they're A-Zoom. These things are pretty well abused now. A-Zoom 8mm dummy rounds. What happened was these two magazines right here, they worked pretty well. Last round hold open is now working. Feed, no problem. They're snug going in. You got to kind of get it up in there and then smack the bottom of it, and then finally you'll see the latch engage. This one here actually goes in easier, but it doesn't have the, in other words, you don't have to smack it quite as hard to get it to lock. But the last round hold open on that one is kind of intermittent. This one here, when the round is on the right hand side of the magazine, so when it's on this side of the mag, it jams. Feeding from this side of the mag, it runs okay, but feeding from the right side, for whatever reason, the round gets caught between, you know, the carrier and bolt are trying to go forward. They start pushing the round, and then the round just, actually I saw it right up against the tip of the bullet guide. So I know the front of these look kind of rough. I don't know if this will show up here. I know that they appear kind of rough. That could be part of my issue. But the thing about that is these other three, even though you know, they're the same rounds, same dummy rounds, even with the rough front end, these three still operated no problem. This one here on the right side, it jams. I'm almost starting to think that possibly it could be the magazine itself and this right lip. Now I've got three other magazines that I can't even get the latch to engage. So I was kind of toying with the idea of seeing if I could find some 5/1000 shim stock and make a spacer to go underneath this that's 5/1000. The thickness on the whole spacer plate is 60/1000. And then the thickness where the relief is cut is 38/1000. Plus I also have to make a lock for the safety so that the safety just can't keep coming down. I don't know how far it'll come, but I need this, you know, to roll a piece over like this and bolt it onto here. So I'm going to kind of mess around here, maybe take a close look at what the interference is with these other magazines. I've got three magazines right now that operate really good. Well, two that work really good and one that doesn't have last round hold open. Maybe if I can get a couple of those of the other three to be working, I'll get together a range test and get this thing down to the range and try and put some rounds down range and see how it performs. And then if it doesn't work well, maybe we can try installing shims underneath this trigger guard to see if that makes an improvement. But it's AK Blue kind of mentioned this, that the numbers are great, but bottom line here, when you're working with this, it's trial and error. There was we took the spacer out and there was no spacers at all, and we tried it like that, and I believe three magazines were able to get three magazines to function. What I did then was I made a spacer out of 15/1000s, and I got it right here actually. I made a spacer out of 15/1000s. I installed that using the screws, and all the magazines went into the rifle, and actually they all cycled. and 3 of the magazines had last round hold open. I thought let me try making a thinner one, so I made a spacer out of 10,000ths shim stock. This is stainless steel shim stock. So I made a spacer out of 10,000 stainless steel shim stock, and I put that in. And again, all the magazines function. All of them will go in. I got 4 of them that have last round hold open. This is hand cycling. Now the dummy rounds that I'm hand cycling with are beat to heck. Using those dummy rounds, 6 rounds per magazine, they all eject, they all cycle in, and I think a range test is what's coming up next. I'm going to leave the 10,000ths in there. Some of the magazines are a little bit snug, you know, getting them in. You got to kind of hit it with the heel of your hand, and then they lock. But I'm going to run it like this with a range test and see what happens. The other thing is I made this, I needed a stop for the safety, so that when you push down, because I removed this piece off of it, on the edge of it is the actual stop, if this thing will focus. On the edge of this thing, you can see that. Oh, maybe you can't see. Anyhow, I needed to replace that. So what I found some 80,000 stainless steel, and I just bent it and drilled a couple of holes in it, and now it bolts to the outside of the latch. So I'm not raising the latch off. So I got it bolted on the outside, and that's that. And that works out pretty good. It's actually better than the original. Made sure that with 10 rounds in each mag, I was able to get it, and it locks into the rifle. So that's been checked as well. That's about it. So the next step of this project, take it to the range and see how this works. If it doesn't work out well, I got this 15,000 spacer. I can go ahead and try that, at the range if the 10,000 doesn't work out well. But if everything cycles well, we got a fixed rifle. So, like I say, the next part is finding out what happens at the range, and then maybe I'll post something on a video that tells you yay or nay, everything is working or needs more work. All right, that's it for now. To be continued once we get an evaluation at the range. Thanks for watching.